The night the snowstorm swallowed the road, I thought the worst thing that could happen was getting stranded in the middle of nowhere. I was wrong, because hours later, when my girlfriend's mother looked at me through the flickering light of a dying flashlight and whispered, "Don't tell my daughter about tonight," I realized that some storms don't just bury roads, they bury secrets too. Before the story continues, take a second and look around you. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strange ways life brings people together when they least expect it, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Her name was Margaret Carter. My girlfriend Hannah had always described her mother as strong, quiet, and a little intimidating. The kind of woman who built her life with discipline and never let people see her vulnerable side. I had only met Margaret twice before that night, and both times she had been polite but distant, like someone carefully measuring whether I deserved to be part of her daughter's life. I was 27 then, still trying to prove I was worthy of Hannah's love. Hannah was bright, warm, and endlessly hopeful. She worked as a pediatric nurse in a small hospital outside Boulder, Colorado, and had the kind of heart that made strangers trust her instantly. Her mother, however, seemed to see through people like glass. That Friday evening, I had volunteered to drive Margaret from Denver to a small town called Silverpine, where Hannah was attending a medical seminar for the weekend. Margaret wanted to surprise her daughter for her birthday. Hannah had no idea her mother was coming. The drive should have taken 3 hours, but halfway through the mountains, the snow started falling. At first it was gentle, almost beautiful. The road curled through tall pine trees, and the snowflakes drifted down like feathers in the headlights. Margaret sat quietly beside me in the passenger seat, wrapped in a thick gray coat, occasionally giving directions or pointing out landmarks. Then the wind picked up. Within minutes, the world outside the windshield turned into a swirling wall of white. The road disappeared beneath thick snow, and the car tires began to slide every time I tried to steer. I remember gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Margaret's voice remained calm, but there was tension behind it. She suggested slowing down, finding a place to stop, but the mountain road had no shoulders, no gas stations, no lights, just darkness and snow. About 15 minutes later, the car skidded off the road. It wasn't a violent crash, but the tires sank deep into a ditch buried beneath snow. The engine was still running, but when I tried to accelerate, the wheels only spun helplessly. We were stuck, and the storm was getting worse. The temperature dropped quickly after I turned the engine off to save fuel. The heater faded, leaving only the quiet howl of wind outside the car. Margaret and I sat there for several minutes, both silently processing the situation. No signal on either of our phones, no headlights from other cars, no sound except the storm. Eventually, Margaret suggested we try walking. She said there was an old ranger station about a mile away along the road. If we could reach it, there might be emergency supplies, or at least shelter from the wind. Leaving the car felt like stepping into another world. The snow came up past my knees, and the wind pushed against us so hard it felt like invisible hands trying to shove us backward. I held the flashlight from the glove compartment while Margaret walked beside me, steady and determined despite the freezing air. At some point during that slow, exhausting walk, she slipped. I barely caught her before she hit the ground. For the first time since I had met her, the strong, composed woman Hannah had described looked fragile. Her breathing was uneven, and her hands were shaking violently from the cold. We eventually found the ranger station exactly where she had said it would be, a small wooden building half buried in snow. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty room with a bench, an emergency lantern, and a small iron stove. Inside, the silence felt almost sacred compared to the storm outside. We managed to light the lantern and start a small fire using leftover wood stacked near the wall. The warmth slowly crept back into our hands and faces. Margaret sat on the bench, staring into the flames. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The storm outside roared against the walls like an angry ocean. Finally, Margaret broke the silence. She started talking about Hannah, not in the careful, guarded way she usually did, but in a soft, almost nostalgic voice. She told stories about Hannah as a little girl, about how she used to draw pictures of animals and tape them to the refrigerator, about how she cried the first time she saw an injured bird and insisted on nursing it back to health. Listening to her felt like discovering a side of Hannah I had never known. Then Margaret's voice changed, quieter, heavier. She began talking about her own life, about raising Hannah alone after her husband died when Hannah was only 5. About working double shifts at a diner just to pay rent. About the fear of failing the one person she loved most. The strong, intimidating woman slowly revealed a lifetime of quiet sacrifices. At some point during the night, the fire dimmed and the lantern flickered. Margaret looked at me with tired eyes and said something I will never forget. She said that sometimes parents carry fears their children should never have to see, that they hide their exhaustion, their doubts, their loneliness, because their children deserve to believe their parents are unbreakable. Then she said she had been wrong about me. She admitted that when Hannah first told her about me, she had assumed I would eventually hurt her daughter the way life had hurt her. But watching me struggle through the storm, refusing to leave her behind, had changed something. And that was when she leaned closer and whispered the sentence that still echoes in my mind. She asked me not to tell Hannah about that night. Not about the fear in her voice, not about the story she had shared, not about the moment she had almost broken down beside the fire. She wanted her daughter to keep believing she was strong. Morning eventually came. The storm faded into a quiet blanket of snow covering the mountains. A ranger truck found us hours later and helped tow my car back onto the road. When we finally arrived in Silver Pine, Hannah ran outside the hotel the moment she saw us. Her face lit up with joy when she saw her mother step out of the car. The two of them hugged so tightly it looked like they might never let go. Margaret smiled at me over Hannah's shoulder, a small, knowing smile. And I understood what she meant the night before. Some stories belong only to the people who lived them. But before we finish this story, I want to ask you something special. If you're still listening, please take a moment and comment the word kindness below. It helps the channel more than you know, and it reminds us how many people still believe in compassion. Years have passed since that storm. Hannah and I eventually married, and Margaret became one of the most important people in my life. She still acts strong and unshakable in front of her daughter. But every once in a while, when Hannah leaves the room, Margaret looks at me with that same quiet smile, a silent reminder of the night we survived together. The night the storm buried the road, but uncovered something deeper, trust. And before this video ends, if this story touched your heart